There are moments in life when something feels different, not louder, not more dramatic, but deeper. It is not the kind of feeling that shouts for attention. It moves quietly, beneath the surface, shaping your thoughts, your fears, and your becoming. Love, in its truest form, is not something you simply recognize with the eyes. It is something your unconscious has already accepted long before your mind tries to define it. The first sign is this quiet knowing. There is no need for constant reassurance, no endless questioning, even in uncertainty. Something within you remains still. It is as if a deeper part of your psyche has already said yes, and that yes does not depend on circumstances. The second sign is the awakening of your shadow. This connection does not only bring comfort, it brings discomfort, reflection, and confrontation. You begin to see parts of yourself you once avoided. Instead of running, something urges you to stay, because on the other side of that discomfort lies growth. The third sign is the dissolution of the ego's control. In ordinary attraction, the ego seeks validation, power, and certainty. But here, those needs begin to fade. You find yourself less concerned with winning and more concerned with understanding, less focused on control and more open to transformation. The fourth sign is the emergence of meaning. This connection does not feel random. It feels purposeful, as if this person has entered your life not just to love you, but to shape you, to challenge your patterns, to expand your awareness, and to guide you toward a more complete version of yourself. The fifth sign is the feeling of home. Not a physical place, not a perfect situation, but a psychological state. With this person, you do not feel the need to perform or pretend. You can exist as you are, with your contradictions, your complexities, your truths. This kind of love is not always easy. It is not designed to keep you comfortable. It is designed to make you whole. And that is how you begin to understand. The love of your life is not simply the one who makes you happy. It is the one who transforms you, the one who reveals you to yourself, and the one who walks beside you as you become who you were always meant to be. Beneath the surface of awareness, something ancient and silent is always at work, observing, absorbing, and knowing long before the mind begins to question. The unconscious does not rely on logic, evidence, or explanation. It moves through symbols, sensations, and subtle impressions that arise without warning. You may meet someone and feel an immediate sense of familiarity, not because you understand them, but because something deeper within you already does. This recognition cannot be explained in words, and yet it carries a certainty that logic struggles to replicate. The conscious mind, in contrast, is slow and cautious. It seeks reasons, analyzes behavior, and attempts to categorize what it cannot fully grasp. It asks questions like why, how, and what if, trying to bring clarity to something that was never meant to be reduced to simple answers. While the mind hesitates, the unconscious has already formed its conclusion. It has read the unspoken language, the tone, the presence, the energy that exists beyond visible actions. This is why certain connections feel undeniable even when they defy reason. You may try to convince yourself otherwise, listing flaws, differences, or obstacles, yet something within resists these arguments. That resistance is not irrational. It is the voice of a deeper intelligence, one that has been shaped by experiences, patterns, and archetypes far beyond your immediate awareness. Often, this inner knowing reveals itself through subtle tension, a pull that cannot be ignored, a sense of rightness that persists even in confusion. It may not always bring comfort. In fact, it often disrupts the order the conscious mind tries to maintain. But disruption is not a sign of error. It is a sign that something real is trying to emerge into awareness. To trust this process requires courage. It means allowing yourself to feel without immediately needing to understand. It means recognizing that not all truths arrive in the form of clear explanations. Some arrive as quiet certainties asking only to be acknowledged rather than analyzed. When you begin to listen to this deeper layer, you realize that the unconscious is not chaotic or random. It is precise in its own language, guiding you toward what resonates with your inner world. And while the conscious mind may take time to catch up, the truth has already been felt long before it is ever fully understood. A deep connection does not merely touch the surface of who you are. It reaches inward, into places you have carefully shaped and places you have quietly hidden. At first it may feel like warmth, recognition, a sense of being seen in a way that feels rare and almost unsettling. But as the bond deepens, something more complex begins to unfold. the light within you starts to expand. Qualities you may have suppressed, such as kindness, creativity, vulnerability, or courage, begin to rise naturally. You find yourself expressing emotions more freely, thinking more openly, and stepping closer to a version of yourself that feels more authentic. This connection becomes a mirror that reflects your highest potential, not as an ideal to chase, but as something already alive within you. At the same time, the shadow begins to stir. The parts of yourself you have avoided, denied, or buried do not remain silent in the presence of real intimacy. Old fears surface, insecurities become more visible, and patterns you thought you had outgrown quietly return. This can feel confusing, even overwhelming, because the same connection that brings you peace can also bring discomfort. This dual awakening is not a contradiction, it is a process of integration. The light shows you who you can become, while the shadow reveals what stands in the way. Without the light, you would lack direction. Without the shadow, you would lack depth. Together, they create a tension that pushes you toward growth. In many cases, people mistake this discomfort as a sign that something is wrong. They withdraw, resist, or attempt to control the situation to restore a sense of stability. But what they are really encountering is themselves, reflected through the presence of another. The connection is not creating these aspects. It is revealing them. To remain present in this experience requires awareness. It asks you to observe your reactions without immediately judging them. It asks you to face what arises without turning away. This is not always easy, because the shadow does not present itself gently. It challenges your identity, your beliefs, and your sense of control. Yet within this challenge lies transformation. When both light and shadow are acknowledged, something shifts. The connection moves beyond illusion and becomes a space where real growth can take place, not just between two people, but within the individual who is willing to see themselves more clearly. True love does not arrive to protect the image you have carefully built of yourself. It does not conform to the expectations shaped by pride, fear, or the need to appear in control. Instead, it moves directly into the structures of the ego and begins to unsettle them. The ego seeks certainty, validation, and dominance. It wants to be right, to be secure, to avoid vulnerability. But in the presence of real love, these defenses begin to lose their authority. You may notice a shift in how you respond. The need to win an argument feels less important than the desire to understand. The impulse to protect your image begins to weaken as honesty becomes more valuable than perfection. This is not a loss of power, even though it may feel that way at first. It is the gradual release of illusions that once defined your sense of self. The disruption of the ego often creates discomfort. You may feel exposed, uncertain, or even conflicted. Old patterns of control, avoidance, or emotional distance no longer function the same way. What once kept you safe now feels limiting. This tension is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that something deeper is beginning to take root. As the ego loosens its grip, the soul begins to strengthen. This strength is not loud or forceful. It does not demand attention or seek approval. It is quiet, steady, and grounded in authenticity. You begin to act not from fear, but from alignment with something more genuine within you. Your actions become less about maintaining an image and more about expressing truth. This process changes how you experience connection. Love is no longer a transaction based on needs and expectations. It becomes a space where growth is possible, where both individuals are invited to evolve rather than remain fixed. You start to recognize that real intimacy requires the courage to be seen without the masks the ego once relied upon. There is a certain humility that emerges from this transformation. You become more aware of your limitations, but also more accepting of them. Instead of resisting your imperfections, you begin to integrate them. This creates a deeper sense of wholeness, one that does not depend on external validation. In this way, true love reshapes your inner world. It challenges what is false, reveals what is hidden, and supports what is real. While the ego may resist this process, the soul grows stronger through it, finding stability not in control, but in authenticity and connection. There are connections that remain on the surface where interaction follows familiar patterns and little truly changes within. And then there are those rare bonds where something deeper begins to unfold, where the relationship becomes more than shared moments or emotional exchange. It becomes a space in which your inner world is constantly being shaped, challenged, and expanded. In such a connection, growth is no longer a separate journey. It does not happen in isolation, nor does it wait for quiet moments of reflection away from the other person. Instead, it emerges directly through the interaction itself. Every conversation, every misunderstanding, every moment of closeness or distance carries the potential to reveal something about who you are and who you are becoming. You begin to notice patterns within yourself that were once invisible, reactions that seemed automatic now invite attention, why certain words trigger emotion, why silence feels heavy, why presence feels both comforting and unsettling. These are not random experiences, they are reflections of deeper structures within the psyche, brought into awareness through the relationship. At times, this process feels demanding. You cannot remain the same while the connection continues to deepen. It asks something of you, not through force, but through the quiet insistence of awareness. Avoidance becomes more difficult, denial less convincing. What once remained hidden now seeks acknowledgement. The other person becomes a mirror, not in a superficial sense, but in a way that reveals both your strengths and your limitations. You see your capacity for care, patience, and understanding, but you also encounter your fears, insecurities, and unresolved conflicts. This dual reflection creates a tension that encourages transformation. Growth within this space is not always comfortable. It may involve confronting aspects of yourself that challenge your identity. It may require letting go of beliefs or defenses that once felt necessary. Yet within this discomfort there is movement, a gradual shift from unconscious patterns toward conscious choice. What makes this connection unique is that growth is no longer optional. It becomes woven into the fabric of the relationship itself. To remain engaged is to evolve. To withdraw is to resist something that has already begun within you. Over time, you begin to understand that the relationship is not only about companionship or emotional fulfillment, it is a path, a process through which you are invited to become more aware, more integrated, and more aligned with your deeper self. And in that realization, growth and connection are no longer separate experiences, but two expressions of the same unfolding journey. There are experiences in life that can be explained, measured, and understood through reason. And then there are those that exist beyond the reach of logic, where understanding is not something you arrive at through thought, but something you feel in a quiet and undeniable way. The sense of an inner home within a connection belongs to this deeper realm. It does not announce itself with intensity or dramatic expression. It appears subtly, often without warning. In the presence of this person, something within you begins to settle. The constant movement of thought slows, the need to analyze fades, and the quiet stillness takes its place. It is not that questions disappear, but they lose their urgency. You are no longer searching for certainty because something deeper already feels certain. This feeling is not dependent on perfection. It does not require everything to be in order or every moment to be harmonious. Even in complexity, even in moments of tension, there remains an underlying sense of grounding. It is as if beneath the surface of changing emotions, something stable continues to exist, untouched by temporary fluctuations. What makes this experience profound is that it cannot be fully explained. You may try to define it, to understand why this person creates such a sense of ease within you, but the answers never seem complete. Logic searches for reasons, for compatibility, for shared values or experiences. While these may play a role, they do not capture the essence of what is being felt. This inner home is not something the other person gives you. It is something their presence allows you to access within yourself. In their company, you are not performing, not adjusting to fit expectations, not guarding parts of who you are. You exist more fully, more honestly. The effort to be understood is replaced by the experience of already being understood on a level that does not require constant expression. There is also a sense of recognition, as if something familiar has been rediscovered rather than newly created. This familiarity is not tied to memory, but to a deeper resonance within the psyche. It feels known, even when it cannot be traced back to any specific moment or reason. To experience this is to realize that not all truths are meant to be explained. Some are meant to be lived and felt. The sense of inner home does not ask for validation from logic. It simply exists, steady and quiet, offering a space where you can rest within yourself without the need to become anything other than what you already are. At the beginning, most connections are shaped by desire. There is attraction, curiosity, a pull toward what feels exciting or new. Desire seeks fulfillment, closeness, and emotional satisfaction. It is often intense, sometimes overwhelming, and it tends to focus on what can be gained or experienced in the moment. But there are rare bonds that do not remain confined within this space. They begin there, but they do not end there. As the connection deepens, something shifts. Desire no longer stands at the center. It does not disappear, but it loses its dominance. What begins to emerge is a sense that the relationship is not only about feeling good or being fulfilled, but about becoming something more. The focus moves from what you receive to what is being revealed within you. In this stage, the bond starts to challenge you in ways that simple desire never could. It confronts your patterns, your fears, your attachments. You begin to see how much of your behavior was shaped by the need for validation or control. The connection no longer allows you to remain in those patterns without awareness. It brings them to the surface, not to create distance, but to invite transformation. This transformation is not immediate, and it is not always comfortable. There are moments when the intensity of the process feels heavier than the pleasure of the connection itself. You may question why something that feels so meaningful also requires so much inner change. Yet this is precisely what separates a transformative bond from a temporary one. The other person becomes more than a source of emotional experience. They become a catalyst. Their presence activates parts of you that were dormant, both constructive and destructive. You are invited to face these aspects, to understand them, and to integrate them rather than avoid them. Over time, the relationship takes on a different quality. It is no longer driven by the urgency of desire, but by the depth of awareness. There is a growing sense that this bond is shaping your inner world, guiding you toward a more complete understanding of yourself. In this way, the connection becomes a path, not a path that guarantees ease or certainty, but one that leads inward. It asks for honesty, for presence, and for the willingness to evolve. Desire may have been the beginning, but transformation becomes the purpose, quietly unfolding as both individuals move closer to who they truly are.